5.3, production and cost. We are still in the supply chapter. 5.3 is the more difficult of the three sections, so I've tried to take some of the more difficult things out and focus on the items that will enhance your learning, that'll help you function in the world a little bit better. And then I've double-checked the tests to make sure that what I've taken out of the lesson has been removed from your test. So, 3 learning objectives. First, we're going to explain how marginal product varies as a firm hires more labor in the short run. Then we're going to explain the shape of the firm's marginal cost curve and identify what part of that is the firm's supply curve. We're going to skirt over a little bit of this. And then learning objective 3, distinguish between economies of scale and diseconomies of scale in the long run. So learning objective 3, you guys will get. Learning objective 2, I'm going to skirt over a few things, and then 1, we're just going to cancel one little slide. So first of all, let's start here. Suppose you manage a firm such as a fast food restaurant. How much should you supply in order to maximize profit? The answer requires a brief introduction into how a firm converts productive resources into outputs. In general, a profit-maximizing firm increases the quantity supplied as long as the marginal revenue from each unit sold exceeds its marginal cost. But no firm is guaranteed a profit in the market economy. Some firms just break even, and others suffer losses that could eventually drive them out of business. Still, just the promise of profit attracts a steady stream of entrepreneurs. So, production in the short run. A firm tries to earn a profit by converting resources or inputs into goods and services or outputs. So we're going to talk about a hypothetical moving company called Hercules. So we have fixed and variable resources. All producers, including Hercules, use 2 categories of resources, fixed and variable. Resources that cannot be altered easily are fixed, be it the size of a building. They're called fixed resources. For Hercules, a fixed resources is a warehouse, a moving van, some moving equipment. Resources that can be varied quickly to change output are called variable resources. In Hercules' example, labor is the only variable resource they have. When considering the time required to change the quantity of resources employed, economists distinguish between the long run and the short run. In the short run, at least one resource has to remain fixed. In the long run, all resources can be varied. Hercules is operating in the short run because some resources are fixed. In this example, labor is the only resource that varies in the short run. A firm can enter or leave a market in the long run, but not in the short run. And they can't leave in the short run because they still own a fixed resource. They can't really leave a market until they get rid of all their resources. And that's hard to do when you still have a warehouse, a moving van, and moving equipment. Okay, total product. Hold on. Yeah, let's go on here. So without labor, nothing gets moved. So total product is 0 when no workers are hired. Okay, we're actually going to look at this. Whoa. So when no workers get hired, your total product is 0. Then if one worker is hired, here we have one worker, that person must do all the driving, packing, and moving. A single worker cannot easily move some of the larger items. Still, one worker manages to move 2 tons per day. When a second is hired, some division of labor occurs and 2 can move the big stuff more easily. So production more than doubles to 5 tons per day. The marginal product of a second worker is 3 tons per day. So the second worker, the marginal product is 3 tons per day, the difference between 2 and 5. So marginal product is the amount by which the total product changes with each additional worker, assuming other resources are unchanged. To rewind a little bit, total product is the total output of the firm per period. So total product here was 5 tons for 2 workers, but marginal product is what the people that run the company are more interested in. Okay, we moved 3 more tons with 1 worker. Okay, if we hire 3 workers, total product is 9, marginal product is 4. So we moved 4 more tons with an additional worker. Okay, we hired a 4th worker, we only moved 3 more tons. And our marginal product is actually decreasing per worker that we hired until we get to 7 and 8, and then you're just not doing yourself any favors. Okay, moving on. Sorry, without labor, nothing gets moved. We actually talked through this, sorry. Marginal product increases as more labor is hired. So now we need to go through the law of diminishing returns. In the graph, I actually put the graph right here again, as more of one resource is added to a given amount of other resources, marginal product eventually declines. As we hire more workers, our marginal product increases and then it decreases or declines. For example, your 4th worker adds to the total product, but not as much as by adding a 3rd. Hiring still more workers increases total product by successfully smaller amounts. So the marginal product declines after 3 workers. The law of diminishing returns is the most important feature of production in the short run. That's what the manager is paying attention to. Once the marginal product turns negative, you're done. Your firm will not survive. And that is what we are not going to look at right now. Learning objective 2, costs in the short run. Now that we have some idea about production, in the short run, consider how the firm's costs vary with output. A firm faces 2 kinds of costs in the short run, fixed cost and variable cost. Fixed and variable. Fixed is sometimes called overhead. It's a cost that does not change in the short run, no matter how much is produced. A firm must pay a fixed cost even when nothing gets produced. Even if Hercules hires no labor and moves no furniture, the firm must pay for the warehouse, the property taxes, the insurance, the vehicle registration, and the equipment. These are all fixed. By definition, a fixed cost is just that. It's fixed. It doesn't vary with output in the short run. Fixed cost is sometimes called overhead. Hercules' fixed cost is $200 per day, and we'll get into that in the graph. On the flip side, a variable cost. It varies with the amount produced. With Hercules, the only variable cost is labor. So if Hercules hires no labor and its output is 0, so the variable cost is 0. As it hires more labor, output increases, but so does variable cost. Variable cost depends on the amount of labor employed and on the wage of what you pay the labor. If the firm can hire each worker for $100 per day, the variable cost equals $100 times the number of workers hired. Let's just talk about fixed and variable really quick. So if you remember, 0 workers, your variable cost is 0. 1 worker, variable is $100. 2 workers, $200, because they're paying each worker $100 a day. 3 workers, $300, etc. Fixed cost doesn't change. It's $200 a day no matter what. Total cost sums the variable cost and the fixed cost. So if you have 1 worker $100 variable, $200 fixed. Add them together, $300 is your total cost. So your total cost increased by $100 with each worker that is hired. Marginal cost. The firm is actually more interested in marginal cost because it's how they can figure out whether they're being profitable or not. What is the marginal cost of moving another ton of furniture? If we look at column 6, marginal cost is the change in total cost divided by the change in quantity. So if we look, we've got total cost. And then we did change in total cost divided by change in tons moved. So our total cost here changed by $100. We wrote it there. $100, wrote it there. Our change in cost is $100. $100. The amount of tons moved is right here. We moved 2 tons. Our change in total cost, our marginal cost. So a change in total cost is $100 divided by the tons moved, the change in tons moved. 0 to 2 is 2 tons. Your change in tons moved is 2. Between $300 and $400 has a change in cost of $100 divided by your change in tons moved. From 2 tons to 5 tons is 3. 100 divided by 3, 33. Okay, our change in cost between $400 and $500 is $100. Our change in tons moved between 5 and 9 is 4. So 100 divided by 4 is 25. This is our marginal cost. Okay, why are we interested in marginal cost? Let's see. Changes in marginal cost reflect changes in the productivity of the variable resource, which is labor. The first 3 workers show increasing returns. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Increasing returns. The rising marginal product of labor reduces marginal cost for the first 9 tons moved. So we've got 9 tons moved. Our marginal cost is decreasing, which is good. So at first, the marginal cost first falls and rises because the returns from labor first increase and then decrease. So our marginal cost decreases and then increases, so we can tell how many workers it makes sense to hire. Okay, it looks like 3 workers is the perfect amount. Our marginal cost is the lowest, and we want it to be low. And we're not going to look at the marginal cost curve. I mean, this is a curve that shows your marginal costs, and at the lowest part of the curve is when you're operating at the most optimal spot in your variable cost and the amount of tons of the amount of tons of furniture you're moving. Marginal revenue. So marginal revenue, to understand how firms work, it may help to draw on what we know about demand. So remember, demand is based on the marginal benefit that consumers get from buying each additional unit of the good. So we buy pizza. Marginal benefit is, demand is based on the benefit that we get with each additional piece of pizza. So likewise, supply is based on the marginal benefit that producers get from selling each additional unit of a good. The marginal benefit that producers get from supplying another unit is called the marginal revenue they receive. Okay, marginal revenue is what they're looking for. Marginal revenue is the change in total revenue from selling that unit. So in a competitive market, the firm's marginal revenue is the market price. A competitive firm receives the market price for selling one more unit. Maximizing profit and minimizing loss. Generally speaking, producers sell additional units as long as the marginal revenue they receive exceeds the marginal cost. Okay, we just did marginal revenue last slide. The marginal benefit that producers get from supplying another unit is the marginal revenue they receive. Okay, revenue is money, so the change in money they receive. So generally speaking, producers sell additional units as long as the marginal revenue they receive exceeds the marginal cost. If they're not receiving more money than they're spending, then the firm's not going to survive. So competitively speaking, the firm supplies additional units as long as the price exceeds the cost. And that makes sense. If the price doesn't exceed the cost, then the company is not going to be able to survive. The firm's profit maximizing level of output occurs where the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost. Competitively speaking, the profit maximizing level of output occurs when the market price equals the marginal cost. Let me see if I can get an example here. All right, sometimes the market price for a product may be so low that production makes no economic sense. At the level of output where marginal revenue equals marginal cost, the firm's total revenue must at least cover its variable cost. In Hercules' example would be the labor. A firm that can't cover variable cost should shut down. Here's the logic. Even if the firm produces nothing in the short run, it must still pay fixed cost. If nothing's produced, the firm's loss equals the fixed cost. For example, Hercules would lose $200 a day if no labor is hired and no furniture gets moved. What if the market price is relatively low, say $25 per ton, but the firm decides to produce anyway? They hire 3 workers for $100 each to move 9 tons per day. The total revenue that we found in a slide before from supplying 9 tons at $25 per ton is $225. That's $75 less than the variable cost of $300. The firm loses $75 in variable costs plus $200 in fixed costs for a total of $275. The firm loses less, only $200, by shutting down. Why produce when doing so increases the loss? Let me see if I can type that out for you. All right, so if Hercules shuts down, they lose $200 a day, which is their fixed cost. Now, what if they try to stay open? So the market price for moving furniture is pretty low. Let's just assume it's $25 per ton. But the firm decides to try to produce this anyway. So they hire 3 workers for $100 each. So they hire 3 workers. Let's make sure we know how much that's going to cost them. $100 each, which is $300, to move 9 tons, which is 25 times 9, which equals $225. Okay? 9 times 25. Yay! All right, so that's $75 less than the variable cost of $300. So this is my variable cost, which is $300. So what they're moving, the money they're making and moving is $225. So they're actually losing $75. They lose $75 in variable costs plus the $200 in fixed costs. So they've lost a total of the $200 fixed cost plus the $75 in variable cost. They lost a total of $275. So this is if they stay open. If they close, or sorry, shut down, they only lose their fixed cost. They actually lose less money by shutting down. I know it doesn't really make sense, but they're losing less money, so it does make sense, right? All right, so a firm's, did we do that? Let me back up. Yep, this is what we just talked through. So, a firm, it can shut down in the short run, but it can't close because it has fixed cost. A firm that shuts down keeps its productive capacity intact. It's paying its fixed cost. And there are companies that do shut down seasonally. For example, a car factory can decide to shut down temporarily if sales are slow. It'll lay off all its workers, but it still has to pay for insurance and keep the building open. Businesses in summer resorts often shut down for the winter. Amusement parks up north, when they cannot stay open in the wintertime, they'll shut down. They'll still pay their insurance, they'll keep all the buildings open, they'll have to pay for heat so things don't freeze, but they let go of all their workers. A firm can leave the market in the long run, but it cannot enter or leave the market in the short run. In the short run, it can just shut down. It cannot close, but in the long run, it can close. And this is supposed to be crossed off. I did cross this off. I don't know why it's still there. That's what we're not going to cover today. And that's learning objective 2. Learning objective 3, production costs in the long run. In the long run, all inputs can be varied, so there are no fixed costs. What should be the size of the firm? And this is all about economies of scale. A firm's owner would like to know how the average cost of production varies as the size or the scale of the firm increases. Average cost equals the total cost divided by output. A firm's long-run average cost indicates the lowest average cost of producing each output when the firm's size is allowed to vary. Bottom line, what we need to know about economies of scale just says, if the firm's long-run average cost declines as the firm's size increases, this reflects the economies of scale. This is the important part about this slide. Reasons for economies of scale would be a larger firm often allows for larger, more specialized machines and greater specialization of labor. So typically, as the scale of the firm increases, capital substitutes for labor. They bring in machines to substitute for labor. Production techniques such as the assembly line can be introduced only if the firm is sufficiently large. So economies of scale, what we need to remember is if the firm's long-run average cost declines as the firm increases, this reflects economies of scale. So as they get bigger, they can produce stuff cheaper. Diseconomies of scale is sort of the opposite. As the scale of the firm continues to increase, another force may eventually take hold. If the firm's long-run average cost increases as production increases, this reflects diseconomies of scale. So as things increase, the cost should actually decrease, which is economies of scale. But as things increase and the price increases, this is diseconomies of scale. An example would be, it's called Oasis of the Seas. It's the world's largest cruise liner. The ship can accommodate 6,300 guests, but it's too large to visit some of the globe's most popular ports, such as Venice and Bermuda. So awesome, it's the biggest cruise ship ever, but if you ride on it, you will never see Venice, which is beautiful. The example in the slide here talks about movie theaters. Movie theaters experience both economies and diseconomies of scale. A theater with one screen needs someone to sell tickets, another one to sell popcorn, and yet another one to run a movie projector. If a second movie screen is added, the same staff can perform these tasks for both screens. What's more, construction costs per screen are reduced because only one lobby and one set of restrooms are required. By adding more screens, which have increased to an average of 13 per theater in the United States, theaters take advantage of the economies of scale. But beyond some number, adding still more screens creates diseconomies of scale. Traffic congestion, around the theater may become gridlocked. The limited supply of popular films will not support that many screens. Finally, scheduling becomes a challenge because only certain times are popular with the public. And you're skipping that part. Okay, and this is a great video that sort of wraps everything up. Okay, that one, 5.3 is difficult. Please, if it doesn't make sense, you can read through the book or listen to the recording again.